Disc 7. Love, God, compassion, guru, and consciousness are examples. They're all very tempting havens, very safe and snug at first, but none of them are final destinations, as anyone who stops in them will eventually come to realize. But that's no reason not to stop in them. Life is not a race, and the only destination is the journey itself. That's what it is, he answers me. Freedom from bondage. Breaking free of the chains that enslave us and keep us thinking we're just lowly biological life forms when in truth we're divine beings. Just like you talking about the guy in Plato's cave releasing the chains that bind him to ignorance. That's just perfect. That's exactly what it is. That's what Maharishi means. I don't have a formal teaching as such, but I know what the Maharishi does, and I know that he has gone to great lengths to protect it from exactly this sort of inevitable distortion. It's no different from the children's game of operator, where a story is passed down the line from person to person, and then the resulting story is compared to the original, and everyone marvels at how little they have in common. No light, no matter how pure, can pass through so many filters and end up anything but murky and dark. If I were attached to results, I might think of this book as my legacy, my gift to future generations that will reflect my teachings as pristinely 1,000 years from now as it will the day it goes to press. But I don't have any thought like that. This isn't my teaching. It's the only teaching, and this is just my way of delivering it. If we were to strip out the excess in this book, it would probably be 1/10 the size and would be just my way of saying what any enlightened guy would say. It's not personal. It's not regional or ethnic. It's not a Western Christian's version as opposed to the Inuit shaman's version or the Tibetan Buddhist version. It's not on that level. What's true is true regardless of region, culture, planet, galaxy, or dimension. It is what it is, and I'm just the guy who happens to be saying it right now. If you put 10 books by 10 enlightened people together and stripped out the excess, they'd all be the same. That's how it is at the core. The reason for all the excess is that there's no saying it directly because there's no it. So everything has to be communicated indirectly. What it's not, what it's like, never what it is. I observe with interest the fact that Chris's insights into the nature of delusion avail him not in the least in his bid for freedom. Ironically, he is imprisoned by his own views of freedom. He does not possess his views. They possess him. All his knowledge and his urgent desire to express it and to have it validated stems directly from his ego's need for reassurance that he is ahead of the curve, which, of course, stems directly from his fear that he is well behind it. While it may be interesting for me to dissect someone's fear patterns and see how they reinforce the hold of ego, it would probably not be useful for me to point it out to Chris. He would not be receptive. His ego hangs from his neck like an anvil. He thinks he's going to think his way out of his chains, as if they were mere thoughts that contained him. He is tossing around Maharishi and Plato as if they were his allies rather than his jailers. By the time Laura makes it to the top of the wall again, I have figured out that I have to make a series of leaps with a constant tendency to the left in order to find a flat place to stop. Sadly, when I get there, a knife-throwing ninja and a blade-throwing machine cut poor, intrepid Laura to fish bait. Chris is intimidated by me. He's also a little wobbly on the ideas he's asserting. That's why he's behaving in this loud and assertive manner. If he were on a fast track to awakening, then it would be quite proper and fitting that he feel wobbly and threatened. He would be plunging headlong into the gnashing jaws of self-annihilation. But Chris isn't on a fast track. He's just stumbling through some conceptual challenges. The forest of delusion is treed with concepts, and all concepts amount to the same thing. You're still in the forest. Chris is wobbly and assertive because some small part of him knows that his exciting new discoveries do not mark the end of his journey, but the start of the real one. I set the controls to Laura aside and watch Chris as he continues to pull back the curtain and reveal the wizard. But instead of Chris and the steel-plated garment in which he is so inviolably wrapped, I see the goddess Maya, architect of this magnificent palace of delusion. She and I both sit listening to Chris. She smiles at me, and I smile back in wonder and admiration. We watch Chris expounding on freedom, even as his attachment to his ideas of freedom form the walls, floor, and ceiling of his cell. "How do you do it?" I ask Maya for the 1,000th time, no less awed than the first. "Smoke and mirrors?" She smiles. "Layers," she says, as if that's the key to this seemingly impossible spectacle we behold. I understand. The only materials she has for the construction of this great edifice are veils so flimsy and transparent that they seem woven of nothing more than wisps of dream stuff. I suppose if that's all you have to work with, then you're going to learn a lot about creating in layers. Maya winks and is gone. I'm back with Chris and a fresh Laura, ready to begin the climb again. Chris is busily equating delusion with hell and bondage and evil and dark forces. Was I ever this tiresome? Oh, yes. Far worse, I'm sure. Laura makes it to the top again and is frantically shooting the ninja as her health reserves dwindle. But her valiant struggle is for naught. Dead again. "You need more firepower," says Chris. He's right. I start her again at the base of the wall climb, but this time I change her weapon of choice from sissy pistols to Uzis and top off her health reserves just to be on the safe side. I make the climb and the tricky leaping grabs and pull up to the sloped floor and leap back and forth until I start taking knife hits from the ninja, but not from the blade-throwing machine, because I've stepped out of its line of fire. I pull the Uzis and shoot the ninja considerably more than it's absolutely necessary. Success! I save the game so that the next time I get her killed, I won't have to go through that particular ordeal again. Chris, in the meantime, has moved on to the subject of God. It sounds like Chris has a lot to say about God, some of it not entirely flattering. Well, at least he's heading in the right direction. I'm reminded of an amusing parable wherein a young student approaches the local guru and declares scornfully that he has thought about it and has decided that he is an atheist. The student is surprised that, rather than being shocked or angry, the teacher seems pleased. "What are you happy about?" demands the perplexed student. "I've just told you that I don't believe in God, so why do you smile?" "It means that you have started to think," the teacher replies. "Now keep thinking." I want to send Chris away, but I want to send him away with something to chew on. Problem is, Chris has his teeth clamped onto victimhood and dark overlords oppressing a spiritually hungry mankind, or some such. I'm not concerned about his current level of understanding so much. That always changes. On this journey, if you aren't constantly disgusted by how naive and foolish you were just a few days ago, you've stalled. What I'd like Chris to do, however, is become a bit less rigid in his views, to not embrace them so tightly that he ends up spending undue amounts of time pinned under them. That's no small task, I know. Insights on the journey of awakening are hard-won treasures, but they must all be jettisoned eventually, and the sooner the better. The less we resist that releasing, and the faster we seek the next treasure, the easier and less painful our progress. "Have you heard of Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters?" I ask. "You mean Electric Kool-Aid and all that? From the 60s? "Right. And the Magic Bus. The first Magic Bus. Before The Who, before the Beatles." "Oh," says Chris flatly. "Cool." "You've probably seen pictures of the bus, or one like it. Very psychedelic. A real work of art. Should be in the Smithsonian," I muse. Chris is looking at me strangely, as if I have slipped out of phase with our conversation. "The name of the bus, you know, above the windshield where the destination sign goes, was Further." "Wow," says Chris, nodding, wondering if I'm done yet so he can continue his lecture on the insidious nature of duality. "Further," I repeat, gazing steadily into his eyes. "Why do you think they named it that?" "Well," he begins, wanting to have the answer, "I guess because they were traveling around in it, and they were saying, onward, further, always more to see, somewhere else to go. The spirit of adventure." "Yes," I agree. "It's funny, though. For me, the word further was the single most important word in my own journey. It was like my mantra, but it had a very specific and poignant meaning. There were many times when the word further came to my aid, like when I'd think I had finally arrived someplace solid, someplace worth staying, and then I'd remember the word further, and what I understood further to really mean, and I'd realize that as much as I might like it where I was, I really wasn't where I was going yet." This is an oversimplification meant to soften Chris up a bit to the idea that where he is isn't where it's at. Even though I may have attained knowledge and understanding beyond my wildest hopes, even though I may have surpassed my highest expectations of what I might accomplish, even though I may have moved beyond many of my own mentors, the word further was always there, echoing in my mind, reminding me that there's only one objective of the journey, and that I wasn't there yet. I look to see if any of this is penetrating. Chris is nodding, indulging me, waiting for his turn to talk again. Oh well, at least Laura made it to the next level. Chapter 30. Even the poorest thing shines. My daily affairs are quite ordinary, but I'm in total harmony with them. I don't hold on to anything, don't reject anything, nowhere an obstacle or conflict. Who cares about wealth and honor? Even the poorest thing shines. My miraculous power and spiritual activity, drawing water and carrying wood. Layman Pang. It's around 1 in the morning, and the house is settled down for the night. I'm basically a night person, although I struggle with it. The problem is that my schedule seems to shift forward every night and day, so that one day I might be going to sleep at 4 in the afternoon and waking up at midnight, and a few days later I'm back to what the world considers a normal schedule, at least for a day or two. If I kept the hours I'm most comfortable with, I'd probably go to sleep at 4 a.m. and get up around noon regularly. That's the schedule I tend to stabilize at when I'm not trying to be normal. So now it's 1 in the morning, and I'm sitting in the living room, sorting through the books, seeing what's come in since I last spent time looking through the shelves. There are several thousand books in the shelves, most of them spiritually related to one degree or another, so that, as it happens, the place I most enjoy book browsing is in my own home. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, most of these books make me cringe with distaste and annoyance, and I have an urge to use them to fuel a huge bonfire. in the context of having a well-stocked spiritual library.